Terrence Williams slammed his foot on the brake and stared at the woman standing alone on the empty road. His interview was in 37 minutes. This was his only chance to give his 6-year-old daughter a real future. Every second he wasted here was a second closer to losing everything. But she was crying, alone, scared, and her car wasn't going to fix itself. He could keep driving and make the interview that would change their lives, or he could stop and help a stranger knowing it might cost him everything. Terrence chose kindness. What he didn't know was that this woman would become the key to everything he'd ever wanted and everything he was about to lose. If you want to see how one act of kindness destroyed a man's future and then rebuilt it into something he never imagined, stay until the end. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far Terrence's story travels. Terrence woke before dawn, though he hadn't really slept. He'd been staring at the ceiling for hours, running through answers to questions he'd memorized from engineering interview prep sites. His daughter Maya was still asleep in the next room, her small breaths barely audible through the thin apartment walls. He stood in the bathroom adjusting his tie for the 5th time. It was an old tie, one he'd worn to his last real job interview 3 years ago, back when his wife was still alive. Back when he still believed things would work out if he just tried hard enough. The suit didn't fit quite right anymore. He'd lost weight, not the good kind. The kind that came from skipping meals so Maya could have seconds. He looked at himself in the mirror, running a hand over his fresh fade he'd gotten at the barbershop yesterday. He wanted to look his best for this opportunity. His phone buzzed on the counter. He knew who it was before he looked. "Terrence, are you up?" His mother's voice was sharp even through the speaker. "I'm up, Mom. I've been up." "Good. Because this is your chance. Your only chance. Maya needs stability. She needs a father who can provide." "I know." "Then don't mess it up." There was a beat of silence. "Your father would have made sure he was ready a week ago. He was the first black engineer at his company, and he never let anyone question whether he belonged there." The line went dead. Terrence walked into Maya's room and knelt beside her bed. She was curled under a thin blanket, clutching a stuffed rabbit with one ear missing her braids, spread across the pillow like a crown. "Hey, sweetheart, time to wake up." Maya stirred, blinking up at him with sleepy eyes. "Is it school day?" "Yeah, kiddo. But Mrs. Johnson's going to pick you up today. Remember, I've got something important." Maya sat up suddenly, her eyes going wide. "The job thing?" Terrence smiled, despite the knot in his stomach. "The job thing." She threw her arms around his neck. "You're going to get it, Daddy. I know you are." He held her for a moment longer than necessary. "I hope so, Maya. I really do." An hour later, Terrence was on the road. The interview was at 10. It was 8:15. Sterling Engineering was 40 minutes away if traffic cooperated. He'd mapped out 3 different routes the night before. Everything was planned. Everything was under control. Then, the highway stopped moving. Terrence watched the line of brake lights stretch ahead of him and felt his chest tighten. He checked his phone. 8:32. He could still make it. But the cars didn't move. 5 minutes, 10, 15. At 8:50, Terrence pulled onto the shoulder and took the next exit. He knew a back road that cut through the industrial district. It would shave off at least 10 minutes. He turned onto the narrow road, accelerating past warehouses and chain-link fences. The road was empty. No traffic, no delays. He was going to make it. Then he saw the car. A sleek black sedan pulled halfway onto the gravel, shoulder hazard lights blinking. The hood was up. And standing beside it, arms wrapped around herself, was a young woman in a business dress and heels, looking completely out of place on this forgotten stretch of road. Terrence's foot hovered over the gas pedal. He should keep driving. There was no time. This was his one shot. If he stopped, he'd be late. If he was late, he'd lose everything. But the woman looked scared. Really scared. Her shoulders were shaking. She kept looking up and down the empty road like she was expecting something bad to happen. Terrence thought about Maya. About what he'd want someone to do if she were ever stranded and alone. His foot moved from the gas to the brake. He pulled over and stepped out. The woman turned toward him startled. Her eyes were red like she'd been crying. "Hey," Terrence called out, keeping his distance so he wouldn't frighten her. "You okay?" She looked at him like she wasn't sure whether to trust him. "My car died. I don't know what happened. It just stopped." Terrence glanced at the sedan. Expensive, new model. Definitely not the kind of car that broke down often. "Did you call someone?" "My phone's dead. I've been here for 20 minutes and no one stopped." Her voice cracked on the last word. Terrence checked his watch. 8:58. He had an hour and 2 minutes. "Do you know anything about cars?" she asked, desperation creeping into her tone. Terrence walked over and looked under the hood. It took him less than a minute to spot the problem. "Your battery cable came loose. It's an easy fix." Her face flooded with relief. "Can you fix it?" Terrence did the math in his head. 5 minutes to reconnect the cable. Maybe 10 if he was careful. That left him 40 minutes to get to Sterling. It would be tight, but he could still make it. "Yeah," Terrence said. "I can fix it." He grabbed a tool from the small kit he kept in his trunk. His hands worked quickly, tightening the cable back into place, checking the connections. The woman stood nearby, watching him with gratitude that made him uncomfortable. "You're a lifesaver," she said. "Really, I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't stopped." Terrence wiped his hands on an old rag. "Try starting it now." She slid into the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine roared to life. She stepped back out, smiling for the first time. Thank you so much. Can I give you something? Money? Can I give you a ride somewhere?" Terrence shook his head. "I'm good. I've got my car." "Are you sure where you headed?" "Job interview." Her expression shifted. Something flickered across her face that he couldn't read. "When?" 10 o'clock. She looked at her watch, then back at him. Her eyes widened. "You should go. Right now. Don't let me make you late." "I will." Terrence closed her hood and stepped back. "Drive safe." She hesitated like she wanted to say something else, but Terrence was already getting back into his car. He had 37 minutes. He could still make it. Terrence drove faster than he should have, weaving through the industrial district, hitting every green light, like the universe was finally cutting him a break. At 9:47, he pulled into Sterling Engineering's parking lot. He was going to make it. He was actually going to make it. Then his phone rang. Mrs. Johnson's name flashed on the screen. Terrence answered, his heart already sinking. "Mr. Williams, I'm so sorry to bother you, but Maya's school just called. She's in the nurse's office. She says her stomach hurts and she's been crying for you." Terrence gripped the steering wheel. "Is she okay? Is it serious?" "They don't think so. But she's asking for you. She keeps saying she wants her daddy." Terrence looked at the building in front of him, at the glass doors, at the future waiting inside. Then he thought about Maya. Alone, scared, crying for him. "I'll call the school," he said. "Tell them I'm aware. But I'm at an important interview right now. Can you pick her up if I can't get there in time?" "Of course, but Mr. Williams—" "Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. I'll call you back." He hung up and ran for the entrance. 9:52. He burst through the doors, breathless and sweating. The receptionist looked up, her expression already disapproving. "Name?" "Terrence Williams. I have an interview at 10 with Mr. Crawford." She glanced at her computer screen. "You're early. Please have a seat. Mr. Crawford will be with you shortly." Terrence felt the tension drain from his shoulders. He'd made it. He sat down in the waiting area, trying to slow his breathing. His phone buzzed again. A text from his mother. "Don't mess this up." He turned the phone over so he couldn't see the screen. At 10:03, the receptionist's phone rang. She answered, listened, then hung up with a frown. "Mr. Williams." Terrence stood. "Mr. Crawford has been delayed. He'll be with you in about 15 minutes. Terrence nodded and sat back down. 15 minutes became 20. 20 became 30. At 10:37, the receptionist's phone rang again. This time her expression changed. She looked at Terrence with something that might have been pity. "Mr. Williams, I'm afraid there's been a change. Mr. Crawford has had to leave for an emergency meeting. We'll need to reschedule your interview." Terrence felt the floor drop out from under him. "Reschedule when?" "I'm not sure. We'll be in touch." "I drove an hour to get here. I've been waiting." "I understand and I apologize for the inconvenience, but there's nothing I can do." Terrence stood there staring at the polished marble floors, at the glass walls that separated him from the life he'd been so close to grabbing. He wanted to argue, he wanted to beg, but he knew it wouldn't matter. "Fine," he said quietly. "Please let me know when you can reschedule." He turned and walked out. In the parking lot, he sat in his car and called the school. "This is Terrence Williams. I'm Maya's father. I got a call that she wasn't feeling well." "Yes, Mr. Williams. She's still in the nurse's office. She's calmed down a bit, but she's asking when you're coming." "I'm on my way." He hung up and started the car. His phone buzzed again. His mother. He answered. "Well," she said. "How did it go?" Terrence closed his eyes. "They had to reschedule." Silence. Then, "What do you mean they had to reschedule? The interviewer had an emergency. They said they'd be in touch." "An emergency?" His mother's voice was flat with disbelief. "Terrence, do you understand what you just lost?" "I didn't lose anything, Mom. It was out of my control." "Was it? Were you on time?" "Yes." "Were you prepared?" "Yes." "Then why didn't they see you?" "Because something came up for them. I don't know." His mother's tone sharpened. "You should have insisted. You should have made them see you. Your father never would have let them send him away like that." "Dad's not here, Mom." The words came out harder than he intended. There was a long silence. Then his mother said, "No, he's not. And that's exactly why you can't afford to fail." The line went dead. Terrence drove to Maya's school in silence. When he walked into the nurse's office, Maya was sitting on a cot, her stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest, her eyes red from crying. The moment she saw him, she launched herself into his arms. "Daddy!" Terrence held her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo. "Hey, baby girl, I'm here. I'm right here. My tummy hurt and I was scared and I wanted you." "I know, sweetheart, I know." The nurse came over, her expression sympathetic. "She's fine, Mr. Williams. I think it was just anxiety. She kept asking if you were going to come." Terrence looked down at his daughter's face. "I'll always come, Maya, no matter what." They drove home in silence. Maya fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from her morning of worry. Terrence carried her inside and laid her on the couch, covering her with a blanket. Then he sat down at the kitchen table and stared at nothing. His phone buzzed. A text from Sterling Engineering. "Mr. Williams, we regret to inform you that we've decided to move forward with other candidates. Thank you for your interest in Sterling Engineering." Terrence read the message 3 times. Then he set the phone down and put his head in his hands. He'd done everything right. He'd been on time. He'd been prepared. He'd stopped to help someone who needed it. And none of it had mattered. That night after Maya was in bed, Terrence sat on the couch and thought about the woman on the side of the road. He wondered if she'd even remember him. He wondered if she had any idea what her broken car had cost him. He didn't regret stopping, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just traded his future for a stranger's convenience. And now he had to figure out how to live with that. 3 days later, Terrence was standing on a construction site in steel-toed boots and a hard hat, hauling cinder blocks in the August heat. It wasn't the career he'd trained for. Wasn't the future he'd imagined. But it was a paycheck. His supervisor, a grizzled man named Tony, walked over and handed him a water bottle. "You doing all right, Williams?" Terrence nodded, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Yeah, I'm good." Tony studied him with eyes that had seen too many men come and go from this site. "You don't look like a construction guy." "I'm not, but I need the work." Tony grunted. "Fair enough. Just keep your head down. You'll do fine." Terrence went back to hauling blocks, his muscles screaming with every lift. 4 years at Howard University, a degree in structural engineering, and here he was, doing the kind of work his professors had promised he'd never have to do if he just studied hard enough. He thought about his father, the first black engineer at his company, the man who'd broken barriers and built a career from nothing. What would he think if he could see his son now? That night, Terrence picked Maya up from Mrs. Johnson's house and made her dinner. Spaghetti with butter and a little Parmesan cheese. It was all they had left until payday. Maya looked up at him while she ate, her eyes searching his face. "Did you get the job, Daddy?" Terrence forced a smile. "Not that one, kiddo. But I got a different one. We're going to be okay." Maya nodded, satisfied with his answer. She trusted him completely, and that trust felt like a weight he wasn't sure he could carry. "Daddy?" "Yeah, baby?" "You look tired." "I am tired, sweetheart. But that's okay. Daddies are supposed to work hard." Maya went back to her spaghetti, and Terrence watched her, wondering how long he could keep pretending everything was fine. Later, after Maya was asleep, his phone rang. His mother. He almost didn't answer, but old habits died hard. "Hi, Mom." "Terrence, I heard you're working construction now." He closed his eyes. "Who told you that?" "Mrs. Johnson mentioned it when I called to check on Maya." "You called Mrs. Johnson?" "Someone has to keep track of what's happening with my granddaughter." Terrence felt his jaw tighten. "Maya is fine. I'm fine. We're managing." "Managing?" His mother's voice dripped with disappointment. "You have an engineering degree, Terrence. You're hauling bricks." "Cinder blocks, actually." "Don't get smart with me." Terrence took a breath, trying to keep his voice level. "It's honest work, Mom. It pays the bills." "Barely, I'm sure. Is this what you want Maya to see? Her father throwing his education away to do manual labor?" "I'm not throwing anything away. I'm doing what I have to do to keep a roof over our heads." His mother was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Your father would be ashamed." The words hit like a punch to the chest. "Dad's been dead for 12 years, Mom. You don't get to speak for him anymore." "I was married to him for 30 years. I know exactly what he would have said. He fought twice as hard as everyone else just to get a seat at that table. And you're giving up because one interview didn't work out." "I'm not giving up. I'm surviving." There's a difference between surviving and settling, Terrence. Don't confuse the two. The line went dead. Terrence sat on the couch, staring at the phone in his hand. His mother's words echoed in his head, mixing with the exhaustion and the doubt and the fear that had been building for months. Maybe she was right. Maybe he was settling. But what choice did he have? The construction site became Terrence's new reality. Every morning at 6 a.m., he'd drop Maya off at Mrs. Johnson's house and spend the next 10 hours moving materials, mixing concrete, or climbing scaffolding in weather that swung between blistering heat and sudden downpours. His body adapted faster than his mind. The blisters on his hands hardened into calluses. His muscles stopped screaming after the first week, but every time he swung a hammer or hauled rebar, a small voice reminded him that he'd spent 4 years in college, so he wouldn't have to do this. He ignored the voice. He didn't have the luxury of self-pity. 2 weeks into the job, Tony pulled him aside during lunch break. "Williams, come here for a second." Terrence walked over, half expecting to be told he was being let go. Instead, Tony handed him a hard hat with a different color stripe. "You're getting promoted. Lead hand. Extra $2 an hour." Terrence stared at the hat. "Why me?" "Because you show up on time, you work hard, and you don't complain. That's more than I can say for most of the guys here." Tony clapped him on the shoulder. "Don't look so surprised. Good work gets noticed, even on a construction site." Terrence took the hat, feeling something he hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Small, fragile, easily crushed, but hope nonetheless. That night he called his mother. "I got promoted," he said before she could start in on him. Silence. Then, "Promoted to what?" "Lead hand. It's not much, but it's a step up. A step up from hauling bricks. Cinderblock's mom. Terrence, this isn't something to celebrate. You're still working construction. You're still wasting your degree. I'm providing for my daughter. That's not a waste. My father is dead. Terrence said, his voice harder than he intended. He's been dead for 12 years, and I'm tired of being compared to a ghost. His mother's voice went cold. That ghost built a life for this family. That ghost sacrificed everything so you could have opportunities he never had. Don't you dare disrespect his memory. I'm not disrespecting him. I'm just trying to live my own life. Then try harder. The line went dead. Terrence sat there, the phone still pressed to his ear, listening to the silence. He thought about calling her back, apologizing, trying to explain. But what was the point? She'd already made up her mind about who he was. A disappointment. A failure. A man who couldn't live up to his father's legacy. 3 weeks later, Tony told Terrence they were moving to a new site. Big project downtown, Tony said. Corporate offices. The kind of thing that has investors and architects walking around in expensive suits. Try not to embarrass me. Terrence almost smiled. I'll do my best. When he arrived at the new site on Monday morning, something felt different. The place was massive, 20 floors, all glass and steel. There were security guards at the entrance, cameras everywhere, and parked near the main trailer was a line of black SUVs with tinted windows. Tony spotted Terrence and waved him over. Big day today, Williams. We've got the executives coming through for a site inspection. Stay professional, stay out of their way, and for God's sake, don't say anything stupid. Got it. Around mid-morning, the SUVs pulled up to the site. Terrence was on the 3rd floor helping unload drywall from a freight elevator when he heard the commotion below. Voices, the click of expensive shoes on concrete. He didn't pay attention. He had 6 more sheets of drywall to move. Then Tony's voice crackled over the radio. All crew heads up. Executive team is on site. Look busy, act professional, and whatever you do, don't stop them to ask for autographs. Terrence kept working. 10 minutes later, the elevator doors opened and a group of people stepped out. 4 men in tailored suits, and 1 woman. She was younger than the others, mid-30s maybe. Dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. A charcoal blazer over a white blouse. She moved with the confidence of someone who was used to being in charge. Terrence glanced at her for half a second, then went back to the drywall. But she was looking at him. He felt it before he saw it. He turned, and their eyes met. And then he recognized her. It was the woman from the side of the road. Terrence froze. She was staring at him too, her expression shifting from professional detachment to something that looked like shock. Then she stepped forward. "Excuse me?" she said, her voice cutting through the noise of the construction site. The crew around Terrence stopped working. Tony turned to see what was happening. The woman walked straight up to Terrence. "You're the man who helped me, on the road, 3 weeks ago." Terrence set the drywall down carefully. "Yeah, I remember." She didn't smile, but her expression softened. "I never got your name." "Terrence Williams." "Rebecca Mitchell." She extended her hand and Terrence shook it. Her grip was firm, confident. "I owe you an apology," she said. Terrence blinked. "For what?" "You told me you had a job interview. I didn't realize how important it was. And because of me, you missed it." Terrence felt the weight of every eye on the floor. "It's fine. You needed help." Rebecca shook her head. "It's not fine. I've been thinking about it ever since that day. You sacrificed something important to help a complete stranger. Most people wouldn't have done that." Terrence didn't know what to say. He'd spent weeks trying not to think about that day, about the interview. He'd missed the opportunity. He'd lost the phone call from Sterling telling him they'd moved on. "I made a choice," he said finally. "That's on me." Rebecca studied his face for a moment. "Can we talk privately?" Terrence glanced at Tony, who was watching the whole exchange with barely concealed curiosity. "I'm on the clock." Rebecca turned to one of the men beside her. "Tell Mr. Harrison." I'll catch up with the tour. I need to speak with Mr. Williams. The man frowned. Ms. Mitchell, we're on a schedule. I'll catch up. Her tone left no room for argument. The executives exchanged glances, then moved toward the elevator. Tony followed them, but not before giving Terrence a look that said, "What the hell is going on?" When they were alone, Rebecca turned back to Terrence. "Tell me what happened, after you helped me." Terrence hesitated. "Why?" "Because I need to know." He took a breath. "I got to the interview on time, but the interviewer had an emergency and had to leave. They said they'd reschedule, but they never did. I got an email a few days later saying they'd moved on." Rebecca's jaw tightened. "What company?" "Sterling Engineering." She nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. "And now you're working here. Construction." "I needed a job. This was available." "Do you have a family?" "A daughter. She's 6. Rebecca looked at him for a long moment. Then she said something that stopped his heart. "I'm the CEO of this company, Mitchell Construction Group. This building you're working on, it's ours." Terrence stared at her. "I'm sorry. What?" "I own the company that's building this project. I took over from my father last year." Terrence's mind was racing, trying to process what she was telling him. "So you're my boss's boss's boss?" Rebecca almost smiled. "Something like that." She reached into her blazer and pulled out a business card. "I want to help you, Terrence, the way you helped me." Terrence looked at the card but didn't take it. "You don't owe me anything." "Maybe not, but I want to do it anyway." She held the card out again, more insistent this time. "Come to my office tomorrow, 9 a.m. The address is on the card." Terrence took it finally. The cardstock was heavy expensive. Embossed letters spelled out her name and title. "What for?" he asked. Rebecca's expression was serious. "To give you a second chance." Then she turned and walked back to the elevator. Tony came back a few minutes later, his eyebrows raised so high they nearly touched his hard hat. "You want to tell me what the hell that was about?" Terrence slipped the card into his pocket. "I have no idea." That night, Terrence couldn't sleep. He kept turning the business card over in his hands, reading the name. Rebecca Mitchell, CEO. He thought about calling his mother, but he couldn't face another lecture about his failures. Instead, he went into Maya's room and sat on the edge of her bed watching her sleep. She looked so peaceful, so trusting. She had no idea how close they were to the edge, how one more setback could send them tumbling into something they might not recover from. "I'm trying, baby," he whispered. "I'm trying so hard." Maya stirred but didn't wake. Terrence brushed a braid away from her face and made a decision. Tomorrow, he'd go to that office. He'd hear what Rebecca Mitchell had to say. And maybe, just maybe, the choice he'd made on that empty road would finally mean something. The next morning, Terrence drove downtown with his heart pounding against his ribs. Mitchell Construction Group's headquarters was a 15-story building with floor-to-ceiling windows and a lobby that looked like something out of a magazine. He felt out of place the moment he walked in, a construction worker in borrowed dress shoes and his father's old tie. The receptionist looked up with a polished smile. "Can I help you?" "Terrence Williams. I'm here to see Ms. Mitchell." The receptionist checked her computer, then nodded. "She's expecting you. 15th floor." Terrence took the elevator up, his palms sweating against the handrail. When the doors opened, he stepped into a sleek hallway with polished wood floors and modern art on the walls. A young woman greeted him immediately. "Mr. Williams, follow me, please." She led him to a corner office with a view that stretched across the entire city. Rebecca was standing by the window, her back to him, phone pressed to her ear. "I don't care what the contractors say. We signed an agreement, and I expect them to honor it. Handle it." She hung up and turned around. "Terrence, thank you for coming." He stepped inside, unsure what to do with his hands. "I wasn't sure if you were serious." Rebecca gestured to a chair. "Sit, please." Terrence sat. Rebecca took the seat across from him, not behind her desk, but closer, like they were equals having a conversation. "I want to hear your story," she said. "All of it." Terrence hesitated. "Why?" "Because I need to understand who you are. And because I've been thinking about what happened on that road for weeks. I was on my way to a board meeting, my first major one since taking over from my father. I was terrified. I thought my career was over before it started." She leaned forward. "And then you stopped. A complete stranger dressed for an interview, clearly in a hurry. You could have kept driving. Anyone else would have. But you didn't." Terrence looked at his hands. "You needed help." "That's not enough of an explanation. Tell me why." So he told her. He told her about losing his wife 3 years ago to a drunk driver, about raising Maya alone, learning how to braid hair from YouTube videos, and cook meals that weren't just microwaved, about the months of unemployment after his company downsized the savings that drained away the apartment that got smaller and more depressing with each passing month. He told her about his mother, about the constant pressure to live up to his father's legacy, the disappointment in her voice every time they spoke, the way she made him feel like a failure, even when he was doing his best. He told her about the day he stopped to help her, about the choice he'd made, about the interview he'd lost, and the job rejection that followed. When he finished, Rebecca didn't say anything for a long time. Then she leaned back in her chair. "You gave up everything to help me, and I didn't even know your name." "I made a choice. That's on me." "No," Rebecca said firmly. "You made a choice because you're a good person. And good people shouldn't be punished for doing the right thing." She stood and walked to her desk, pulling out a folder. "I made some calls this morning. Sterling Engineering still has that position open. It turns out they had some internal issues that delayed their hiring process. And I happen to know the CEO, he owes me a favor." Terrence's chest tightened. "What are you saying?" Rebecca handed him the folder. Inside was a printed email, an invitation to interview for the same position he'd been rejected from. "I'm saying you're getting another shot," Rebecca said. "If you want it." Terrence stared at the paper, his hands trembling. "Why would you do this?" "Because you didn't leave me on the side of the road when you had every reason to. Because you put someone else's safety ahead of your own future. Because that's the kind of person I want to help." Terrence didn't know what to say. "There's one condition," Rebecca added. Terrence looked up. "You have to pass the interview on your own. I can open the door, but you have to walk through it." Terrence nodded slowly. "When?" "Friday. 2 days from now. 9 a.m. Terrence looked down at the folder again. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I don't know how to—" "Don't thank me yet," Rebecca interrupted. "Just go in there and show them what you're capable of." Terrence left the office feeling lighter than he had in months. But by the time he got home that night, the fear had set in. What if he wasn't good enough? What if he failed again? He called his mother without thinking. "You have another interview," she said when he told her. "At Sterling." "Yeah, this Friday." There was a long silence. Then his mother said, "Don't get your hopes up, Terrence. You know how these things go." Terrence felt the air leave his lungs. What's that supposed to mean? "It means you've been disappointed before, and I don't want to see you fall apart again when it doesn't work out." "It might work out. It might not." His mother's voice softened, but the words still cut. "I'm just trying to protect you. You can't afford to fail again." Terrence's jaw tightened. "I have to go." "Terrence." He hung up. He sat on the couch, staring at the folder Rebecca had given him, and wondered if his mother was right. Maybe he wasn't good enough. Maybe he'd been fooling himself all along. But then he thought about Maya, about the way she looked at him like he could do anything. And he thought about Rebecca, about the way she'd looked at him in that office. Not with pity, with hope. He opened the folder and started preparing. The next 2 days were a blur of studying and rehearsing. Terrence went over his old engineering textbooks, reviewed industry standards, practiced answers to every possible question he could think of. Mrs. Johnson watched Maya while he prepared, and every night he'd pick her up and they'd have dinner together, simple meals. But meals they ate as a family. On Thursday night, Maya watched him lay out his clothes for the interview. "Is that Grandpa's tie?" she asked. Terrence looked down at the blue silk tie in his hands. "Yeah, it is. Grandma said Grandpa wore that tie to his first big interview. She said it was his lucky tie." Terrence felt something catch in his throat. "She told you that. She calls me sometimes, when you're at work." Terrence sat down on the bed, pulling Maya onto his lap. "What else does Grandma say?" Maya thought about it. "She says you're very smart, like Grandpa was. She says she worries about you because she loves you." "She said that." "Yeah, but she also said you need to work harder because life is harder for people like us." Terrence hugged his daughter close. "Grandma's not wrong about that baby. But you know what I'm going to show her. I'm going to show everyone." Maya looked up at him with those big, trusting eyes. "I know you will, Daddy. You're the bravest person I know." Friday morning arrived cold and clear. Terrence dropped Maya off at school, gave her an extra-long hug, and drove to Sterling Engineering for the second time. This time, he was 15 minutes early. The receptionist recognized him. "Terrence Williams, I have an interview at 9. She checked her computer and nodded. "Mr. Crawford will see you shortly." Terrence sat in the waiting area, his hands folded in his lap, trying to keep his breathing steady. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. "Good luck. But remember what I said." Terrence turned the phone off and slipped it into his pocket. At exactly 9 o'clock, a door opened and a man in his 50s stepped out. "Terrence Williams." Terrence stood. "Yes, sir." "James Crawford. Come on back." The interview room was smaller than Terrence expected. Just a table, 2 chairs, and a window that looked out over the city. Crawford gestured for Terrence to sit. "I'm going to be honest with you, Mr. Williams. I wasn't planning to see you again. You missed our first interview, and we generally don't give second chances." Terrence nodded. "I understand. But Rebecca Mitchell called me personally. Told me what happened. Told me about the choice you made." Crawford leaned back in his chair. "So I'm curious. Tell me about that day." Terrence took a breath. "I was on my way here. I'd mapped out 3 different routes, left early, done everything right. Then I hit traffic and had to take a detour. That's when I saw her, a woman stranded on the side of the road with a broken-down car. She was alone, scared, and her phone was dead." "And you stopped?" "Yes, sir. Even though you knew you might miss your interview. I didn't know for sure. I thought I could fix her car and still make it in time. But you didn't." Terrence met Crawford's eyes. "No, I didn't." Crawford was quiet for a moment. "Why did you stop?" Terrence thought about the question. Really thought about it. "Because she needed help. Because I have a daughter, and I thought about what I'd want someone to do if she was ever stranded like that. Because my father raised me to believe that character is what you do when no one's watching." He paused. "And because I couldn't live with myself if I'd driven past and something happened to her." Crawford studied him for a long moment. Then he opened a folder and started asking technical questions. Load-bearing calculations, thermal efficiency, project timelines, building codes, safety protocols. Terrence answered every one of them. His hands didn't shake. His voice didn't waver, because he knew exactly what he was talking about. This was what he'd trained for. This was what he was good at. And for the first time in months, he felt like himself again. When the interview ended, Crawford stood and extended his hand. "We'll be in touch, Mr. Williams." Terrence shook his hand firmly. "Thank you for the opportunity, sir." He walked out of the building, got into his truck, and sat there for a long time. He didn't know if he'd gotten the job. But for the first time in a long time, he felt like he'd done everything he could. And maybe that was enough. 3 days passed. Terrence went back to the construction site, back to hauling materials and following Tony's orders. Nobody asked about the interview. It was like that entire week had been a dream. On Wednesday afternoon, his phone rang. Terrence was up on the scaffolding when he felt the vibration. He climbed down, pulled off his gloves, and answered. "Mr. Williams?" The voice was professional, clipped. "This is Sarah Thompson from Sterling Engineering. Mr. Crawford would like to speak with you. Can you hold?" Terrence's heart stopped. "Yeah, I can hold." There was a click, then silence. Terrence stood there, surrounded by noise and dust, holding his phone like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Then a man's voice came through. "Terrence Williams." "Yes, sir." "This is James Crawford. We've reviewed your interview and your qualifications. I'll be frank with you. We don't usually give second chances." Terrence held his breath. "But after meeting with you, I'm inclined to make an exception. We'd like to offer you the position. Senior Structural Engineer. Salary is $85,000 annually, full benefits, and a signing bonus of $5,000. If you're interested, we'd like you to start in 2 weeks. Terrence's legs nearly gave out. He leaned against the scaffolding, trying to process what he'd just heard. "Mr. Williams, are you still there?" "Yes," Terrence managed. "Yes, I'm here. I accept. Thank you." "Good. We'll send over the paperwork this afternoon. Welcome to Sterling." The line went dead. Terrence stood there, the phone still pressed to his ear, the construction site noise washing over him like static. He'd done it. He'd actually done it. Tony walked over, frowning. "You good, Williams? You look like you just saw a ghost." Terrence looked up at him, and for the first time in months, he smiled. A real smile. "I got the job." Tony's expression shifted to something that looked almost like pride. "No kidding. No kidding." Tony clapped him on the shoulder. "Well, hell. Good for you, man. When do you start?" 2 weeks. Tony nodded. "Then let's make sure you finish strong here. No slacking off just because you've got a fancy new job waiting." Terrence laughed, actually laughed for the first time in what felt like forever. "Yes, sir." That evening he picked Maya up from school early. She ran to him when she saw him waiting by the gate, her braids bouncing. "Daddy, what are you doing here?" Terrence scooped her up and spun her around. "I got the job, baby girl. The engineering job. We're going to be okay." Maya's eyes went wide. "Really? The one you were studying for?" "The one I was studying for." She threw her arms around his neck. "I knew it. I knew you would get it." Terrence held her tight, breathing in the smell of her shampoo, feeling her small heart beating against his chest. "Thank you for believing in me, Maya, even when I didn't believe in myself." Maya pulled back and looked at him with those serious eyes. "Daddy, you're the bravest person I know. Of course I believed in you." That night, after Maya was asleep, Terrence called his mother. "I got the job," he said before she could say anything. There was a long silence. Then, "You're serious?" "Yes. Senior engineer. Good salary. Benefits. Everything." Another silence. Then his mother said something he hadn't expected. "I'm proud of you, Terrence." The words hit him harder than he expected. "Thanks, Mom. I know I've been hard on you. I know I've said things that hurt, but I was scared. After your father died, after you lost your wife, I was terrified you'd give up. That Maya would grow up without stability." Her voice cracked. "I pushed you because I didn't know what else to do." Terrence felt his throat tighten. "I know, Mom. Your father would be proud of you. I want you to know that. He'd be so proud of the man you've become." Terrence closed his eyes. "I hope so." "He would. I know he would." They talked for a few more minutes, and for the first time in years, it didn't feel like a fight. When they hung up, Terrence sat there in the quiet of his apartment, feeling something that had been missing for a long time. Peace. He thought about Rebecca Mitchell, about the woman on the side of the road who'd turned out to be a CEO, about the door she'd opened and the chance she'd given him. He pulled out his phone and typed a message. "Thank you. For everything. I got the job." Rebecca's response came an hour later. "I knew you would. You earned it." Terrence smiled and set the phone down. Tomorrow he'd give his notice at the construction site. He'd start preparing for the new job. He'd begin looking for a better apartment in a safer neighborhood. But tonight, he was going to sit here in the quiet and let himself feel something he'd almost forgotten existed. Hope. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of goodbyes and new beginnings. On his last day at the construction site, Tony gathered the crew around during lunch break. "All right, listen up," Tony said, his gruff voice cutting through the noise. "Williams here is leaving us. Got himself a fancy engineering job, which means we're losing the only guy on this crew who actually knew what he was doing." The men laughed. Terrence shook his head, embarrassed by the attention. "Come on, Tony. Don't make a big deal out of it. Shut up and take the compliment." Tony reached into his back pocket and pulled out an envelope. "This is from all of us. Just a little something to help you get started." Terrence took the envelope. Inside was $300 in cash and a card signed by everyone on the crew. "Good luck, Williams. Don't forget us, little people. You earned this, man. Go build something great. Thanks for not being a jerk like the last lead hand." Terrence looked up, his throat tight. "You guys didn't have to do this." Jake, one of the younger workers, shrugged. "You were a good boss. Treated us like we mattered. That's more than most people do." Tony clapped Terrence on the shoulder. "Go build something great, Williams. And if that fancy job doesn't work out, there's always a spot for you here." Terrence shook his hand firmly. "Thank you. For everything." Tony grinned. "Now get out of here before I change my mind and make you finish the drywall on the 6th floor." Terrence's first day at Sterling Engineering felt surreal. He walked into the building in a pressed shirt and tie, his own this time, not his father's, carrying a new briefcase he'd bought with the money from the construction crew. The receptionist smiled and handed him a badge with his name already printed on it. Terrence Williams, Senior Structural Engineer. He stared at those words for a long moment before clipping the badge to his jacket. A young man from HR led him to a cubicle on the 4th floor, gave him a laptop and a stack of project files, and introduced him to his team. They were polite, professional, and didn't ask where he'd been or what he'd been doing before. It didn't matter. He was here now. By the end of the first week, Terrence had settled into a rhythm. The work was challenging, but it was the kind of challenge he'd been trained for. Structural calculations, safety assessments, project timelines. Everything he'd studied in college finally had a purpose again. It felt like waking up after a long sleep. He picked Maya up from school every day at 3, helped her with her homework, and made her dinner. On Friday, they went out for ice cream at the little shop near their apartment. Maya looked up at him with a chocolate mustache on her face. "Daddy." "Yeah, baby. Are you happy now?" Terrence considered the question. "Yeah, sweetheart, I think I am." Maya grinned. "Good, because you smile more now. I like it when you smile." Terrence reached over and wiped the chocolate from her face. "I like it when you smile too, kiddo." 3 weeks into the new job, Terrence received an email from Rebecca. "How are you settling in? I'd love to hear how things are going." He typed a response immediately. "Better than I could have imagined. Thank you again for believing in me." Rebecca's reply came an hour later. "You earned it. And if you ever need anything, don't hesitate to reach out. I'd like to stay in touch." Terrence stared at the message for a long time. He'd spent so many years feeling alone, like he was carrying the weight of the world with no one to help. His mother's constant criticism, the isolation of single parenthood, the daily struggle just to keep his head above water. And now, here was this woman, someone he'd helped for 15 minutes on the side of a road, offering to be in his corner. He typed back, "I'd like that." 2 months later, Terrence signed the lease on a new apartment. It was in a better neighborhood closer to Maya's school, with 2 bedrooms and a small balcony that overlooked a park. The day they moved in, Maya ran through the empty rooms, her footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. She picked the smaller bedroom, the one with the window that faced the park, and declared it the best room in the world. Terrence stood in the doorway watching her spin in circles with her arms out. "You like it, baby girl?" "I love it, Daddy. Can we get a dog?" Terrence laughed. "Let's get settled in first. Then we'll talk about dogs." Maya ran over and hugged him around the waist. "This is the best day ever." Terrence held her close, feeling something break open inside him. Relief, pride, hope, all the things he'd been afraid to feel for so long. That evening, after they'd unpacked the essentials and ordered pizza, Terrence called his mother. "We moved into the new place today." His mother's voice was warm. "How is it?" "It's good, really good. Maya loves it." "I'm glad, Terrence. You've worked hard for this." There was a brief silence. Then his mother said, "I'd like to come see it, if that's all right." Terrence smiled. "Yeah, Mom, I'd like that." The following weekend, his mother drove down. Terrence and Maya met her at the door. She stepped inside, her eyes sweeping over the apartment, the clean floors, the new furniture, the photos on the walls. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Then she turned to Terrence, and her eyes were wet. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. Terrence frowned. "For what?" "For being so hard on you. For making you feel like you were never good enough." Her voice cracked. "I was scared, Terrence. After your father died, I was so scared you'd end up struggling. That Maya would grow up without stability. I watched your father work twice as hard as everyone else just to prove he belonged, and I thought if I pushed you hard enough, you'd find a way to be strong like him." Terrence felt his chest tighten. "I know, Mom. But I was wrong. You were already strong. You were already doing everything you could, and instead of supporting you, I made it harder." She wiped her eyes. "I'm proud of you. I should have said that more." Terrence stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her. She held on to him, and he felt her shoulders shake. "You raised me to be kind," Terrence said softly. "You taught me to help people, even when it's hard. And that's what saved me. That's what brought me here." His mother pulled back and looked at him, her face streaked with tears. "You're a good man, Terrence. A better man than I gave you credit for." Maya came over and hugged both of them, and the three of them stood there in the small living room, holding on to each other, finally at peace. Later that evening, after his mother had gone home and Maya was asleep, Terrence stood on the balcony and looked out at the park. His phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. "How's the new place?" Terrence smiled and typed back, "Perfect. Thank you again for everything." Rebecca's response came quickly. "You did the work. I just opened the door." Terrence thought about that. Then he typed, "Would you like to get coffee sometime? I'd like to say thank you in person." There was a longer delay. Then Rebecca replied, "I'd like that." "How's Saturday?" On Saturday, Terrence met Rebecca at a coffee shop downtown. She was already there when he arrived, sitting by the window in jeans and a sweater, looking more relaxed than he'd ever seen her. "Hey," Terrence said as he sat down. Rebecca smiled. "Hey, yourself. You look good, less stressed." "I feel less stressed." They ordered coffee, and for a while they just talked about work, about Maya, about the strange turns life takes. "I keep thinking about that day," Rebecca said eventually. "The day you stopped to help me. I was on my way to my first major board meeting since taking over from my father. I was terrified. I had no idea what I was doing." She looked at him. "And then my car broke down. And I thought, that's it. I've failed before I even started. And then you stopped. A complete stranger. You didn't ask for anything. You just helped." "It was the right thing to do," Terrence said. "Most people wouldn't have done it. But you did. And that told me something about who you are." She leaned forward. "I've been thinking about starting something. A foundation. Something that helps people who've fallen through the cracks. People like you who have the skills and the drive, but just need someone to give them a chance." Terrence looked at her. "That's a great idea. Would you want to be involved?" "Not now, but eventually." Terrence thought about it, about all the people like him struggling in silence. "Yeah, I'd like that." Rebecca smiled. "Good, then we'll make it happen." They finished their coffee, and when they left, Terrence walked her to her car. She turned to him before getting in. "Thank you for stopping that day," she said. "You didn't just fix my car. You reminded me what kind of person I wanted to be." Terrence smiled. "You did the same for me." Rebecca reached out and squeezed his hand. "Stay in touch, Terrence Williams. I have a feeling we're going to do great things together." Then she got in her car and drove away. Terrence stood there for a moment watching her go. 3 months ago, he'd been hauling cinder blocks on a construction site, wondering if he'd ever get his life back on track. Now he had a job he loved, an apartment in a good neighborhood, a daughter who was thriving, and a future that actually looked bright. All because he'd stopped to help a stranger on the side of the road. He thought about his father, about the man who'd worked twice as hard to prove he belonged, about the legacy he'd left behind. And Terrence realized something. He wasn't trying to live up to his father's legacy anymore. He was building his own. When he got home, Maya was waiting for him at the door. "Daddy, Grandma called. She wants to know if we can come visit her next weekend." Terrence picked her up and spun her around. "I think we can arrange that." Maya giggled. "She said she's going to teach me how to make Grandpa's favorite cookies, the ones with the chocolate chips." Terrence felt something warm spread through his chest. "That sounds perfect, baby girl." Maya wrapped her arms around his neck. "Daddy, yeah, I'm really glad you helped that lady with the broken car." Terrence held her close. "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." That night after Maya was in bed, Terrence sat on the balcony with a cup of coffee and thought about the journey that had brought him here. The grief of losing his wife, the struggle of single parenthood, the months of unemployment and rejection, the construction site, the interview he'd missed, the woman on the side of the road. Every step had felt like a setback at the time. But now he could see the bigger picture. Every struggle had been preparing him for this moment. Every failure had been teaching him something he needed to know. And the choice he'd made on that empty road, the choice to stop, to help, to be kind, even when it cost him everything, had set everything in motion. He thought about what he'd tell Maya when she was older. He'd tell her that life was hard, that it would knock you down again and again, that there would be days when you felt like giving up. But he'd also tell her that kindness mattered, that helping others wasn't a weakness, it was a strength, that the measure of a person wasn't how much money they made or how high they climbed, but how they treated the people around them. And he'd tell her that sometimes when you least expect it, the universe rewards you for doing the right thing. Not because you're looking for a reward, but because good things happen to good people, eventually. Terrence finished his coffee and went inside. Tomorrow was another day, another chance to build the life he wanted. And for the first time in a long time, he was looking forward to it. 6 months had passed since Terrence started at Sterling Engineering. 6 months of waking up before dawn, not because he dreaded the day, but because he was excited for it. 6 months of picking Maya up from school with stories about the bridges he was designing and the buildings that would stand for generations. 6 months of feeling like himself again. On a Saturday afternoon in late spring, Terrence took Maya to the park near their new apartment. She ran ahead of him toward the swings, her braids bouncing in the sunlight. "Push me, Daddy." Terrence jogged over and gave her a push, watching her soar higher and higher, her laughter cutting through the cool afternoon air. He thought about where they'd been a year ago, the cramped apartment, the empty refrigerator, the nights he'd stayed awake wondering how he'd pay the bills. It felt like a different lifetime. "Daddy," Maya called out as she swung back toward him. "Yeah, baby. Why did you stop to help that lady?" Terrence caught the swing and slowed it down. "What lady?" "The one with the broken car. The one you told me about." Maya looked at him with those big, serious eyes. "How do you remember that?" Maya shrugged. "Because it made you late for your job thing. And then you were sad for a long time." Terrence sat down on the swing next to her, the chains creaking under his weight. "I stopped because she needed help, and it was the right thing to do. Even though it made you sad. Even though." Maya thought about that for a moment. Then she said, "I'm glad you helped her." Terrence smiled. "Me too, kiddo. Because now we have a nice home, and you're happy again." Terrence felt his throat tighten. "Yeah, now we have a nice home." Maya jumped off the swing and grabbed his hand. "Can we get ice cream?" Terrence laughed and let her pull him toward the path. "Yeah, baby, we can get ice cream. 3 weeks later, Rebecca called him. "I have something I want to show you," she said. "Can you meet me tomorrow downtown around noon?" Terrence agreed, curious about what she had in mind. The next day, he met her in front of a building he didn't recognize, a modest 3-story structure with large windows and a freshly painted sign above the door. The Mitchell Williams Foundation. Terrence stared at the sign. "What is this?" Rebecca smiled. "This is what I've been working on for the past 3 months. Remember that foundation I told you about? The one that helps people who've fallen through the cracks?" Terrence nodded slowly. "Well, it's real now, and I want you to be part of it." She opened the door and led him inside. The space was open and bright with desks arranged in clusters and a small conference room in the back. A few people were already working, sorting files, answering phones, setting up computers. "We're launching officially next month," Rebecca said. "The focus is job training and placement for people who have the skills but just need someone to give them a chance. Single parents, people coming out of difficult situations, anyone who's been overlooked by the system." Terrence looked around, taking it all in. "This is incredible." "I couldn't have done it without you," Rebecca said. Terrence turned to her. "What do you mean I didn't do anything?" "You stopped to help me when you had every reason not to. You reminded me that kindness still exists in this world. And you showed me what kind of person I wanted to be." She gestured around the room. "This is because of you, Terrence. Every person we help, every life we change. It all started because you stopped on the side of a road." Terrence didn't know what to say. "I want you on the board," Rebecca continued. "Not as a figurehead, as a real partner. Someone who can help me find the people who need us most. Someone who understands what it's like to fall through the cracks and climb back out." Terrence looked at the sign again. The Mitchell Williams Foundation. His name. On a building. Next to hers. "I don't know if I'm qualified," he said. "You're more qualified than anyone I know. You've lived it, and that matters more than any degree or credential." Terrence thought about everything that had led him to this moment. The grief, the struggle, the months of doubt and fear. The choice he'd made on that empty road. "Okay," he said finally. "I'm in." Rebecca extended her hand and he shook it. "Welcome aboard, partner." That night, Terrence called his mother. "I have some news," he said. "Good news or bad news?" "Good news. Really good news." He told her about the foundation, about the work they'd be doing, about his role on the board, about the sign with his name on it. His mother was quiet for a long time. "Terrence," she said finally, her voice thick with emotion, "your father would be so proud of you." Terrence felt tears sting his eyes. "You think so?" "I know so. He always believed that success wasn't just about what you achieved for yourself. It was about what you did for others. That's what he taught you, and that's exactly what you're doing." She paused. "I'm proud of you, son. More proud than I can say." Terrence wiped his eyes. "Thanks, Mom. That means everything. Now tell me more about this foundation. I want to know every detail." They talked for over an hour, the longest conversation they'd had in years. And when they finally said goodbye, Terrence felt something he'd been missing for a long time. Connection. Real, genuine connection with the woman who'd raised him. The foundation launched on a bright Tuesday morning in June. Local news cameras were there. The mayor gave a speech. Rebecca cut a ribbon and invited everyone inside for a tour. Terrence stood in the back watching it all unfold, still not quite believing this was real. Maya tugged on his sleeve. "Daddy, why is your name on the building?" Terrence knelt down to her level. "Because I'm helping Ms. Rebecca do something important. We're going to help people find jobs and take care of their families, like I wanted to do for us." Maya's eyes went wide. "That's really cool." "You think so?" "Yeah, you're like a superhero, but with buildings instead of capes." Terrence laughed and hugged her. "I love you, baby girl." "I love you too, Daddy." Rebecca walked over, smiling. "There's someone I want you to meet." She led him to a young woman standing near the entrance, mid-20s, nervous, clutching a resume in her trembling hands. "This is Denise," Rebecca said. "She's one of our first clients. Single mother, 2 kids, lost her job 6 months ago. She has a degree in accounting but can't get anyone to give her a chance." Terrence extended his hand. "Nice to meet you, Denise." She shook it hesitantly. "Nice to meet you too, Mr. Williams." "Call me Terrence." He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw himself a year ago. The fear, the desperation, the determination to keep fighting even when everything seemed hopeless. "Listen to me," he said. "I was exactly where you are 12 months ago. I had a degree, experience, everything I was supposed to have. But I couldn't get anyone to see me. I was working construction, skipping meals, so my daughter could eat, wondering if I'd ever get my life back on track." Denise's eyes filled with tears. "What changed?" "Someone gave me a chance. Someone saw what I could do instead of what I couldn't. And that's what we're going to do for you." Denise wiped her eyes. "Thank you. I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything. Just show up, work hard, and when you make it, and you will make it, pay it forward." Denise nodded, her jaw set with new determination. "I will. I promise." The first year of the foundation exceeded every expectation. They placed 47 people in stable jobs. They helped 12 families move into better housing. They launched a job training program that had a waiting list of over 200 people. Terrence was there every step of the way, interviewing candidates, connecting with employers, speaking at events about his own journey from construction worker to engineer to foundation board member. He told his story again and again. Not for glory or recognition, but because he knew it mattered. Because every person struggling in silence needed to know that things could get better. On the 1-year anniversary of the foundation's launch, they held a gala to celebrate. Terrence stood at this podium, looking out at a room full of people, donors, volunteers, clients who'd found jobs and rebuilt their lives. Maya sat in the front row between his mother and Mrs. Johnson, all 3 of them beaming with pride. "1 year ago," Terrence said, "I stood on the side of a road and made a choice. I could have kept driving. I could have prioritized my own needs over someone else's. But I stopped. I helped a stranger. And it cost me everything." He paused. "At least that's what I thought at the time. I missed my job interview. I got rejected. I spent months wondering if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life." He looked at Rebecca, who was smiling from her seat. "But here's what I've learned. Kindness isn't a transaction. It's not something you do expecting to get something back. You do it because it's right. Because it's who you are. Because the world needs more people who stop instead of drive by." He looked at Maya. "My daughter asked me once why I stopped to help that lady with the broken car. And I told her because she needed help. Because I have a daughter, and I thought about what I'd want someone to do if she was ever stranded and alone. Because character is what you do when no one's watching." His voice cracked. "And because I couldn't live with myself if I'd driven past and something happened to her." He looked back at the crowd. "That one act of kindness, 15 minutes on the side of a road, led to everything you see here tonight. This foundation, these jobs, these lives changed. All because I chose to stop." He held up his glass. "So here's to the people who stop. Here's to the ones who choose kindness over convenience. Here's to everyone in this room who's committed to paying it forward." The room erupted in applause. Maya ran up to the stage and threw her arms around him. "That was amazing, Daddy." Terrence held her tight. "Thanks, baby girl, but I couldn't have done any of it without you." Maya pulled back and looked at him. "Daddy? Yeah. When I grow up, I want to help people like you do." Terrence felt tears streaming down his face. "You already do, sweetheart, every single day." After the gala, Terrence found Rebecca standing alone near the windows looking out at the city lights. "Hell of a speech," she said. "I meant every word." "I know you did. That's what makes it matter." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. "I've been thinking," Rebecca said, "about expanding the foundation. opening branches in other cities, helping more people. That sounds like a lot of work. It is, but I think we're ready, and I can't think of anyone I'd rather do it with. Terrence looked at her. Are you asking me to go into business with you? Rebecca smiled. I'm asking you to help me change the world, one person at a time. Terrence thought about everything that had led him to this moment, the grief, the struggle, the choice on that empty road. I'm in, he said. Let's do it. Rebecca extended her hand and he shook it. Partners. Partners. A year later, the Mitchell-Williams Foundation had offices in 3 cities and had helped over 200 people find stable employment. Terrence had been promoted to senior vice president at Sterling Engineering. Maya was thriving in school, making friends, and already talking about becoming an engineer like her dad. His mother visited every month, and their relationship had transformed from tension and criticism to genuine warmth and support. On the 2nd anniversary of the day he'd stopped on that lonely road, Terrence took Maya back to the exact spot where it had all begun. They stood on the gravel shoulder, looking at the empty stretch of pavement. This is where it happened, Maya asked. This is where it happened. Maya looked around. It doesn't look special. Terrence smiled. Most important moments don't. They just look like regular life until you realize everything changed. Maya took his hand. I'm glad you stopped, Daddy. Me too, sweetheart. They stood there for a moment in comfortable silence. Then Maya said, Daddy. Yeah. Can we get ice cream now? Terrence laughed. Yeah, baby, we can get ice cream. They walked back to the car hand in hand. Terrence looked back once at the empty road at the place where his old life had ended and his new one had begun. He thought about the scared woman standing by her broken car, about the choice he'd made, about everything that had followed. He thought about his father, about the legacy of hard work and determination he'd left behind. And he realized something. He wasn't carrying his father's legacy anymore. He was building his own. One act of kindness at a time. Terrence Williams had stopped to help a stranger on the side of a road. It had cost him a job interview, weeks of doubt, and months of struggle. But it had also given him a purpose, a partnership, and a foundation that would change thousands of lives. It had given him a second chance with his mother, and a future bright enough for his daughter to dream about. It had reminded him that character wasn't measured by success or failure, but by what you did when no one was watching. And in the end, that single moment of kindness, 15 minutes on a lonely road, had become the foundation for everything that mattered. Sometimes the choices that cost you the most are the ones that give you everything. Sometimes helping a stranger changes your life more than it changes theirs. And sometimes the universe rewards you for doing the right thing, not because you're looking for a reward, but because good things happen to good people. Eventually. Always. Every single time you choose kindness over convenience. Terrence Williams stopped to help a woman with a broken car, and that choice made him the man he was always meant to be.